Okay, welcome everybody. I am so happy to be able to present Tammy Martin, who is one of our newest club members, by the way, and also newly in the villages. So congratulations, Tammy. Yeah, a lot of you guys know Tammy. She's been on many of our walks. She's an excellent birder. She points out all kinds of stuff that we might otherwise miss. And she's also traveled all around birding. So, and my sister and I were lucky enough to get with Tammy as she was researching a trip to Africa. And we ended up in Uganda, and you guys are going to see how amazing it absolutely was. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Tammy. It's an awesome presentation. You guys are going to love it. So take it away, Tammy.
Thanks, Liz. Um, I'm a cyclist. I hit the asphalt a week and a half ago and I didn't do very well. So that's why I'm in this lane. Um, a little background on going to Africa. I've done a number of Western Hemisphere trips, Central America, South America, and my husband's a cyclist and his buddies are cyclists and they are mathematicians and they know numbers. They don't understand a birder, what we're doing, what we're looking for, why we're, but they understand numbers, life lists. Oh, wow, you got 60 new birds today. That's a good day. So when I was looking at another place to go, I talked to a friend of mine who is the company that we went with, and he said, you need to go to Uganda. It's a great new place for birding, and you'll see a ton of new birds, and your husband will be happy because you'll have good numbers to report and la da 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 da. So I started researching trips to Africa. I also have a very soft spot for mountain gorillas. So this trip going to Uganda not only gave you good numbers of birdings, but good mammals and primates, and it hit all the boxes. Um, to do that research, I looked at all the different companies. There are a lot of birding companies, tour companies, and they all go to Uganda. So I did this spreadsheet, and I'm a little anal on things like that. The dates and the price and where they were going and la da 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 da. And then I talked to my friend Rob, whose company was in the running, and he said, you put together a group and we will take you on a good trip to Uganda. So, Uganda, the Pearl of Africa. This is a nickname that was coined by Winston Churchill in 1908. Describes the stunning natural beauty, diverse landscapes, abundant wildlife, and it's the source of the Nile River, one of the sources. Rich biodiversity and a warm culture, highlighting its magnificence and its vastness. So why not? The bird featured here is the gray crowned crane. That's their natural bird, the national bird of Uganda. Now, I don't normally dedicate a talk to someone or to people, but the first two people that joined me in this trip that said, I want to go, was my friend Ann from Cincinnati. I'm from Ohio. And my dear friend Tim from Cleveland. Um, they jumped in immediately. We want to go. We want to go. Ann's husband came in. I had another Ohio friend. I talked to Liz and Ann, and they said, sure, we'll come. And and then Ann had some friends from New York that joined us. Well, Tim has been wanting to go to Uganda forever. So he put together PowerPoints on learning the bird species before we left. We Zoomed for about a year out every 2 weeks. And thank you to Brownwood Birders. We started using the free Zoom, which is about 45 minutes, and then it cuts you off. And then Liz worked out a deal, an arrangement, I should say, to use the Brownwood Birders Zoom app, it was a program account, the Zoom account. And we did this for a year. We went through mainly the birds that we thought we would see, that Tim thought we would see. And we went through those and It was fantastic. We did this good research. Then we did mammals. We did a little bit on reptiles. It was just crazy. Well, my dear friend Ann passed away last January. So she was on a birding trip, thank goodness. She was doing what she loved. So she and her husband dropped out, and then Tim's wife came down with lung cancer. So he dropped out. So I'm dedicating this to them. They were really involved to start, and alas, they couldn't come. So why Uganda? Not just birding. Think of sizing. It's about the size of Oregon. Has approximately 1,116 bird species. Oregon has less than half of that. 50% of Africa's bird species are found in Uganda. Has 10 national parks, 12 wildlife preserve sanctuaries. It's a developing country, and the tourism money helps. So that's a good plus on for us that like to make sure our money is going to where it's needed. The lodges and the main roads are fairly modern. The lodges were all pretty good. The main roads were all asphalt. You get off the main roads, and we were glad we had local people driving us. And yes, mountain gorillas. Was on a kick back in the late 80s when Diane Fossey was murdered. I read everything I could on mountain gorillas, and to be able to go somewhere where there was a chance to see them just was like icing on the cake. So where is Uganda? We've got a map of Africa on the left, and that little country that's circled is Uganda. Um, it's East Africa. I'm going to use this for a minute. East Africa. Um, there's a few of the national parks marked, the little orange or the little green sections. The interesting thing about the Nile, this is Lake Victoria over here. It's the White Nile. There's two Niles. There's the White Nile and the Blue Nile. And this is the source of the White Nile. It starts in Lake Victoria. It goes up to this little lake. I can't remember the name of it. Then it comes over here to Murchison. And then it goes north into Sudan. And I'm going to use this map over here. The Blue Nile comes out of Ethiopia. They join, and then they go out through Egypt. So just a little geography there. But it was interesting that we were actually on the Nile River. We were up here at the Murchison Falls. We were in that area where the Nile starts. So if you like Egypt history, that's kind of a throw that in. What else? Kampala is the capital city, for a little history of Uganda. The White Nile flows through Lake Kyoga. It goes to Lake Albert, which is up by Murchison, and then it goes north from there, joining with the Blue Nile. Okay, here's our itinerary. We flew into Entebbe, which is right outside. That's where their national airport is. And we did counterclockwise. We went up towards Murchison, and then we went around and then came back out. We'll hit all of these spots. Babamba Swamp, Ziwa Rhino Sanctuary, Murchison Falls, Benungo Forest, the Royal Mile, Kabali. Well, we are going to touch on all those. We also included 4 boat trips, but we'll get those later. Here's our group. This is at the top of Murchison Falls. Judith is on the far left. She's one of our guides. Mark is next. Rob is the company owner. Rob Ripma. I've traveled with him a number of times. He's right here in the blue hat. I think his aunt lives in the villages.
Something like that.
Something like that, yeah. Anyway, Mark and Becky are near Rob. Rob contacted me when we knew that Tim and Ann and Ann's husband Mike were not going. He said, "I've got this couple from Pennsylvania or from Indiana that want to join us." and you'll love them. And I said, what? So Becky and Mark were a great addition to our group. Next is Cynthia Norris. She's my friend from Akron, Ohio. She was my roommate. Then there's me. Anne, Gail, and Frank are the New York couple. Davis is next. He's one of the other. Did I lose my mic? Doesn't matter. I've got a big voice. Davis is our guide. Our other guide.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. Did I turn it off? Oh, the battery's going dead. And then Liz. So this is our illustrious group. Our first place we stayed was in Entebbe. Okay. At the Boma. Was a lovely hotel. It had wonderful grounds that we could bird on. There's Judith and Davis with our vehicles. We had 2 safari vehicles that we used 4 and 4. It was very comfortable. Everybody had a window seat. Just a couple of pictures. I like to throw in lodging pictures because people want to know where are we staying. This is all the beds had mosquito netting. There's a chance of malaria, so we were all taking malaria pills and whatnot. But we slept with the netting down, and then really modern bathroom.
Don't trip.
I didn't, yes. And the one bird that I've got here is one that we saw on the grounds. We saw a number of things there, but this is the eastern plantain eater. Pretty good size bird that we saw a number of these. So the tour officially started the first afternoon after we got in late the night before. We got up, we kind of adjusted to the time change, and then we went to the Entebbe Botanical Garden. This is not like a formal botanical garden that you may have been to. It's more just an open park, and we wandered around. It was on the shore of Lake Victoria, and we saw all kinds of, you'll notice lots of dirt roads. These were, I worked briefly in my college years in North Carolina, and the dirt reminded me of red dirt in North Carolina. So, but some of the birds there, the African fish eagle, similar to our American eagle, but the white comes farther down, front and back. The woodland kingfisher, lower, we ended up seeing 11 different species of kingfishers. It was amazing. This was the first one, or one of the ones we saw in Entebbe. And then this shorebird, water wader bird called a hammerkop. Hammerkops are pretty interesting. They've got a weird shaped head, and they make these stick nest things up in the trees that have a interior nest, and they go inside. I don't think I had a picture of where the hole was, but they pointed this out and said, "Oh, that's the hammercock nest." So that was pretty cool. So the first boat ride we took was a swamp on the edge of Lake Victoria called Lake Mabamba Swamp. And you go there for this classic bird of Uganda, the shoebill. The shoebill is a monotypic species, which means there's only one bird in that family. A monotypic, it's one bird. It's a very ancient type bird, looks very dinosaurish, has this huge bill. They eat lungfish, just one of the big fish that it finds there. It's very, doesn't move around a lot, so it's easy to kind of sneak up and get to. We were in these big boats. You see the boats? We took a couple of boats across the lake, and then we got into some smaller boats so that we could get into the swamp, maneuver into the swamp. This bird, they're tracking all the birds, all the shoebills, because they are an iconic bird for Uganda, and they have some management things, just like a lot of birds are dealing with. This one's got a band on it. It's metal. They call them they ring the birds. We band the birds. It's a British thing. They've got a ring on them. And it's above that's the ankle way up here. So the ring is and it's loose so it can slide up and down while the bird is, it doesn't constrict the bird.
How tall is that bird?
About 4 feet,
Between
4.5 feet.
5, yeah.
Yeah, pretty good size. We saw about 2 or 3 that day. Later in the trip, we saw a couple more, which was pretty neat. Our guide Judith actually works on research for the shoebill. Funny thing, before we left, our Gail and Frank in one of our Zooms said they were members of the Linnaean Society out of New York City, and that they were going to have this special program on shoebills. So I logged in and watched it. And then later, after we got to Uganda, realized it was Judith giving the talk. So I was like, oh my gosh, I watched that. But yeah. So anyway, we'd gotten into these smaller boats. There are about 4 or 5 of us in each one. I think we were in 3 boats. And we were trying to find other things. We saw lots of big flashy birds, but this little guy tucked into the reeds here, he's right here. This is a lesser jacana. I think we got more excited about that. You see the African jacanas all over the place, but this little guy was tucked in, and we're all standing up with our binoculars looking at that one little bird. So some of the birds that we saw while we were in the swamp, long-toed lapwing, and it's got 2 little babies in the bottom left picture that had just hatched. There's one of the raptors that we saw, the black-winged kite in the middle. Here's another kingfisher, the malachite. Stunning little, and it's not a very big bird, but a stunning bird. The African jacana that I mentioned is in the lower left. There's one of the cormorants, reed cormorant, not terribly exciting, but it's a new species, so we look at those. And then some white-faced whistling ducks. We have our black-bellied whistling ducks here. We had a new whistling duck species. And the tucked back here's another kingfisher. We'll see him later. Right there, that's the pied kingfisher. We saw a ton of those. They were very common. And then the yellow-billed duck, good name. So when we left Entebbe, the Boma, we went to the Ziwa Rhino and Wildlife Ranch. Most of the places we stayed for 2 nights. This one we only stayed for 1. This is an actual fenced preserve. All the national parks are not fenced, so wildlife can roam free. This is a place that's actually, they're actually preserving and raising in a natural setting the southern white rhinos, because the northern white rhinos are nearly extinct. They were trying to do some interbreeding, and that wasn't working well, but they're doing great with the southern whites. They're hoping to repopulate some of the areas with these. So this is about a 27 square mile, 17,000 acre sanctuary, fenced, as I said, with free roaming wildlife. Little shot of Cynthia in my room. They've got the upper, the hanging nets that came down. Teeny little bathroom. I didn't get a picture of that. Kind of an all-in-one shower, toilet, sink. Yeah. This picture over here on the left, these are the breeding lines, and just showing kind of the success they've been having. And they have all these calves that are numbered, and they said they were going to have a big fundraiser coming up where you could help name the calves, donate some money and name the calf. But they were very proud of the fact that they had so many new calves that they were going to name. So we got up the interesting thing about this place is they took us to our rooms for the night. And then they said, we'll come get you for dinner because it's in a central location. And so they sent a guide or a attendant, whatever, would come and get us, walk us to dinner, and then we ate dinner. And they said, we do that because, and they shone their lights out in the lawn, and there are rhinos walking around and monkeys, and there's all kinds of things walking around. And they had to actually escort us back and forth to our rooms. So we got up the next morning, had breakfast, did a little birding around the lodge, and then we went out and got to be with rhinos. This was really, really very cool. Like I said, these are all southern white rhinos. You can kind of see Anne distance-wise, how close we were. There's a young calf right here that's nursing. And I've got a little video. Just it was just very pleasant. Everybody said, oh, weren't they mean? No, these guys were comfortable. They're happy. I think in this group, there was a young 3-year-old female. They don't get into breeding until about 4. And the males were just kind of being friendly to it. Not, just walking around, being close. It was just a very cool experience. And we had a guide with us. He walked us through, and if the rhinos started to move some, he would have us readjust, come this way, and we'd slowly walk around, and he'd give us information as we were moving through. We did see some pretty cool birds in this sanctuary. Lots of different starlings in Africa. This one on the top, the lesser blue-eared starling, common warthog. We saw it was a little fuzzy on the head. One of the woodpeckers we saw, the Nubian woodpecker, golden-breasted bunting. He was singing well. The pin-tailed white-eyes, this center low. There were a lot of black and white birds. That was Liz's joke. Oh, it's another black and white bird. Yeah. But this is the male, and the female is, like our warblers, dull, brown, nondescript. These guys were flying, and those tail feathers were, they were putting on a show for the females. And then the last one here is the broad-billed roller. This great big bill. So the next park that we went to was Murchison Falls National Park. It's the largest park in Africa. Some of the animals we saw there, or one of the animals, we saw lots of olive baboons. They would hang out along the road. And they said, do not stop along the road because they will come and they will swarm your car. So we would slow down and take pictures and then keep on going. And they'd kind of look at us like, yeah, whatever. We went to Murchison Falls, the actual falls. You'll see that in a little bit. And I had to get the touristy picture of me there. You saw a number of those signposts around the country. The other bird there is the red-throated bee eater there in the middle. We saw 11 species of bee eaters, which was pretty amazing. And of course, life birds, you have to celebrate. So you drink what the locals are drinking. So we had Tusker beer, and I actually watched a video the other day, a documentary about elephants, and Tuskers are the young males that are out waiting, or maybe not the young males, the males that are waiting to come in to find the females, the Tuskers. So it was pretty good beer. That and Nile. I don't know. There were a couple of pretty good beers. So then we went to, or while we were there, we were at the Murchison Falls. This is Murchison Falls, and it is Awesome, awesome. This is the White Nile, and it's plunging 141 feet through a 23-foot chasm, wide chasm. It's the deepest, narrowest something. It hit some sort of mark there. Very loud, very powerful. You go to this particular spot to see a particular bird, which I didn't get a picture of, but it was one of the Prattnicals.
That
Yeah,
sounds right.
our friend Frank on the trip, a number of people are trying to see every species of bird in the world. There's 11,000 or more. That's a big challenge. The other challenge is to try to find a bird from every family species, and there's maybe 300 families, something like that. I should look that up. Frank is trying to hit all the families, so that one hit one of the marks for him, and he was terribly excited. But as you see, it's not a dry spot. We all got a little wet. They told us, leave your cameras over here. But there was this nice viewing station that you could look up and see the falls. They were pretty awesome. Some of the other things we did there at Murchison, we popped the tops of our safari vehicles, which was incredible. And you could stand on the seats, you could look out, we could see all kinds of stuff, like these elephants. That's their noise. They're growling.
Dumbo.
Yeah. So they were right along the road. And these are piak, the birds that were flying around, the little blackbirds. Those were they like to hang around the big elephants. The bird in the center is one of the lapwings. We saw a lot of lapwings. That's a spur-winged lapwing. And then the mammal here is the water buck, male and the female. We saw a number of those. But in Murchison, like I said, it's the largest national park, and we just drove. And you drive these roads all around. You're in with the wildlife. You're not to get out of the vehicle because it's their territory. They can come and get you. As long as you're in your vehicle, you're fine. And it was amazing. The second boat ride we took was along the Nile River up to the base of the Murchison Falls. If you see the picture of all of us in the boat, here's the falls back here, which we had just been at the afternoon before, and you could only get so far up because the power of the water coming down was just crazy. It was crazy. We saw hippos, we saw Nile crocodiles. Just an idea. You'll see some hippos coming up on the left, popping up, looking at us. I'd say they are probably more dangerous than the rhinos. So we didn't get close to them, but you only see the fun part. When they get out of the water, they're bigger. Now, some of the birds that we saw along this river, the African darter is very similar to our anhinga. Darter is what it's the British term I would say the British term for what we call the anhinga. One in the top center is the African finfoot. If you've birded in South America, it's very similar to the sungrebe, same family. The Goliath heron is the largest heron in the world. We've got the saddle-billed stork. Beautiful bill, black and white, another black and white bird. It's actually resting on its ankles. Remember I told you those are its ankles. Those aren't the knees are higher up. So it's just resting there on the ankles. They're bent backwards like that. And this last picture is really kind of tough to get But this is the giant kingfisher. This is the world's largest kingfisher, and he's tucked in here. Look at the bill. Just a massive bird. And our guide was fantastic because he knew where they hung out. He says, "Oh, we might find one." So while we were in Murchison, we spent 2 nights at the Pacuba Safari Lodge. Separate lines of rooms, and then we all ate at the dining area there, bottom left was a nice pool. It had these fun monkey lights in the dining room. Again, the mosquito netting, it was very comfortable. Bathroom facilities. They had routine power outages during the day, which was a little, we came back at one point to rest a little bit and the power went out, so you couldn't use your computers, you couldn't use your phones, and they said, "Oh, well, it happens." Okay, all right. So we came back to rest, then we went back out to do some late afternoon safari drives. The cool little monkeys up on the log, those are patas monkeys. One of the hornbills that we saw, this is the African gray hornbill. We saw 6 different hornbill species. Not, if you watch The Lion King, this isn't quite the one that Zazu, but it's same family. Hughlin spurfowl, it's kind of like a grouse type of bird. And then it's a little fast. I'm not very good at cell phone videos, but just an idea of how the wildlife, they're just right on the roads. And we're driving slowly. These are water bucks that are going across the road. There's many more behind us. Just African safari. Just very cool. Acacia trees they're with huge thorns. Here's some other hooved animals that I didn't write down what they were, but we saw all kinds. Just a smattering of some of the other animals and birds. Another hornbill, the Abyssinian ground hornbill. This is the only one that actually stays on the ground. The others fly around more. This is the male. Below it is the cob. This is a male. It's in one of the deer families, the cob. The African savanna elephant with all kinds of piak birds on its back. Just, it's that classic raising the trunk up to eat stuff out of the acacia trees. Here's another one of our black and white birds. This is the pied cuckoo. We saw 8 different species of cuckoo. And here's another kingfisher. This is the gray-headed kingfisher. And it's some more pretty birds. Northern red bishop on either corner. I didn't need 2 pictures, but why not? And the one down here, look at the thorns. This is the acacia, one of the acacia trees. You just don't want to grab plants. Top middle is the Namakwa dove. We saw several dove pigeon species. Our guide, Rob, got really excited when we saw this. So you knew he's been to Uganda numerous times. And when the guides get excited, you knew you're seeing some cool stuff. The long-crested eagle, easy to tell. The lower corner there, that's the red-necked falcon. And our guide, Davis, referred to it as the NASCAR falcon. NASCAR falcon, yes, the redneck. And then the dark chanting goshawk is in the middle. Long legs. Saw lots of those. A few more pretty birds, a couple of the bee eaters. There's the cinnamon chested bee eater. Opposite corner is the olive bee eater. Lower left is the Diedrich's cuckoo, one of the cuckoos. Just a stunning bird, that iridescent green and white. And then the Rothschild's giraffe is the giraffe that we saw, and they were just amazing. And if you zoomed in on it, you found the yellow-billed oxpeckers. And they hang out on the birds, on the animals, going after the bugs, the ticks, and very beneficial to the birds or to the animals. So our next hotel we stayed at for a couple more nights was the Masindi Hotel. This was built in 1923, and it's the oldest hotel in Uganda. It's had very famous Americans stay there. Ernest Hemingway had at one point crashed a plane near Murchison Falls. We saw the site when we took our boat ride. There was a sign there. This is where Hemingway crashed his plane. And he stayed at the Masindi Hotel as he recovered. So the bar is named after Hemingway. Humphrey Bogart, Katharine Hepburn stayed there as they were filming The African Queen. And it's an old lodge, but it was comfortable. Again, netting. The funny thing about Africa lodgings, I'm not very big, but these bath towels were like twice my size. I couldn't believe how big these bath towels were. You know, that's folded in half. It was crazy. So we spent a day while we were there. We went over to the Badungo Forest, the Royal Mile. The Royal Mile it's a famous birding trail in the Badungo Forest near Murchison, known for its rich bird life. It was named for its popularity as a traditional leisure stopover spot for Uganda's royalty. They would go there and drive this. It's maintained with this kind of open field. So you can drive through or walk through and be in nature. It was really tough to bird there though, because the birds are way up high or deep in the woods. The couple from Indiana, Mark, was not a big birder. And after that day, he said, "You guys really worked hard today." Because we did. We worked hard. So here's another little kingfisher, the African dwarfed kingfisher. It was fairly easy to see, but this guy here with a leaf in front of its face, that's as good as it got. That was the Eastern yellow-billed barbet. I also like plants, so I had to throw in, there's some sort of cabbage type thing. Sorry, I didn't look that one up, but they were growing like a epiphyte growing up on the branch. And then these really loud, you may not be able to see them. I didn't get a video of them because they shut up as soon as I tried. These are cicadas. They were huge and they were loud. It was like, what in the world is this noise? And they said, "Oh, those are the cicadas." Crazy. All right, a few more birds, of course. One of the big families that we saw, two of the big families we saw in Uganda were the sunbirds and the weavers. I only have two pictures of the sunbirds here, but we saw some beautiful, they're like our hummingbirds. They don't have hummingbirds. The hummingbirds are only a Western Hemisphere family. So they have other things, and the sunbirds take that spot where they're eating the nectar. But there's a collared sunbird on top and a bronze sunbird. But there were royal and regal and blue-headed and red-chested, and we saw 20 species of sunbirds. The cute little bird in the middle is a mouse bird. That's the spectacled mouse bird. We saw a couple of different mouse birds. And then on the right are the weavers. The top one is velotes. I think that's how you say it. Black weaver, and then the black-headed weaver. We saw 20 species of weavers too. These guys weave nests every year, brand new nests, because they're kind of like our orioles. They nest for the first year or for the year, then they fall apart and they break, and they weave brand new nests every year. And we saw some at one place that were weaving, and the males weave the nests for the females to come and check out. Very social bird. Our next stop was the Guerza Canopy Lodge. Harriet is the owner, manager of this new, and it's a fairly new lodge. Harriet was the very first female guide in Uganda. There's a big push. The company that we worked with, the ground company, is very supportive of female guides in Africa, and they promote that, and they educate them. And Harriet was their very first one, and so she's the inspiration for a lot of the other younger guides. But she was planting a tree for Rob's company. This is our buddy Rob. Saberwing Nature Tours is the company. So they were planting a tree on their property to honor us for being there. Very, very comfortable again. And nice grounds. We birded the grounds. Amazing stuff. But it's close to Kabale National Park. And you go to Kabale National Park to see chimpanzees. There's an extra tracking fee to see chimps and gorillas. That money goes to the company or goes to the country to help support their conservation work. And we got really close to these guys, which was pretty interesting. Got a couple of videos. Yeah. The one guy's just hanging with his arm up, like, yeah, whatever. And the little guy is just going crazy. And then we got another one here. Ken, I'm taking these with my cell phone. I had one walk right by me and said, oh my gosh, those are chimps. Now, the chimps and the gorillas are habituated, what's called habituated. They're used to people. They don't want to take people in and have them be harmed. So they go through this very detailed process of making the animals used to having people around them so that they ignore you. They don't even look at you. They just wander through. Okay, we're doing our thing. So that was allowed us to get close to these guys. So we had our main guide. I'm sorry, I don't have anybody's name. Don't remember. Here was our main guide. She told us all about what we were seeing, and she said, "Oh, come on, come on." It's like, okay. We had a couple of armed guards. One guy's taking a break. They're not armed to protect us from people. They're armed to protect us from other wildlife. There are forest elephants in this woodland area, this park. We didn't see those, fortunately, but they are there to protect the tourists, and they're not going to necessarily shoot these animals, but they're shooting above to scare them off. But it's just a precautionary thing. I had friends in Ohio that got pretty upset and said, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. So I said, it's okay. It's all right. Yes, that's right. And it was just a precaution. Now, the first thing we did that day before we went to see the chimps, we went to find this bird. And our guide here, I bought a t-shirt. I was going to wear it today, but I can't do t-shirts right now. So it's up here. And our guide took us back. And this is a pitta. I'm very partial to pittas. There's a number of pittas in the Western Hemisphere. They're called ant pittas. They're little. They look like they have long legs. They look like balls with long legs. They're just not, but they're flashy in color. And none of us got a picture because they were so deep in the woods and the forest that you couldn't get a picture. You could see them maybe, or you could see them for seconds and then it would go away. And the way they got them so that we could actually see where they were, they would play back, as some people will do to get the birds to respond. They don't make a vocal noise, but they make this wing, it's called a wing sonation, where they jump up and they flutter their wings and they land. And it's this. And so our guide found them and got us to come back in to where they were. And he's like pointing through that, see that little hole in there? And it was a challenge, but it was it was well worth the trip, and we got the picture of the artwork and the t-shirt as our proof. Our guide here then took us to the Bogoti wetland, which was another nearby place that we walked these boardwalk back to get some cool things. And again, our guides got excited when we saw this one down on the bottom here. That's the red-headed bluebill. The guides got really excited about that one. The one in the top middle, the red-headed quelea. Some of these names are crazy. It was a kind of like a sparrow finchish type bird. And then the bottom left was another one of these birds that the family that Frank was going after. This is the Western Nicator. And then there's most of our group. I think Liz was taking the picture when we were done from walking through this swamp, this wetland. But we got, 20 or 30 different birds there, but those are just the highlights. Our next lodging was at the Nganzi Game Lodge. This was near the Queen Elizabeth National Park. Had a main, and most of these had like a main gathering dining area, and then you had separate lodging spots. Rob and Cynthia and I were up a little up above in this little lodge. Everybody else, if you look down this area, there were steps going down. There were lodges down on the hillside, 100 steps
Oh,
or something.
I think 1,000.
Yeah, there were lots of
It seemed like it.
steps to go up and down. I had to I'm a member of the American Birding Conservancy, a good student friend of mine when I works there. And they now have this part of the magazine where they say, show us where you're reading your magazine. So I did read a couple of pages while I was gone, but I had Rob take my picture. I made the magazine, the next issue. So that was pretty fun. We're on our way to take another boat ride, I think, or go somewhere, but I wanted to show you what papyrus looks like. You hear all about papyrus growing up. It's the plant on the far left, that really long stalks with the frilly. These are papyrus gonalex that are on this papyrus. There's another weaver. That's the slender-billed weaver. It's on a papyrus. And the little bird in the top, it's not on papyrus, but it's a swamp. It's the lesser swamp warbler. Just habitat-wise, interesting plants. We saw a lot of papyrus. And it's pretty tall stuff, too. So we went to Queen Elizabeth National Park, and we did our drives through, and just some of the really cool birds we saw. The white-browed cuckoo, far left. Just a very stunning bird. This one closer to me is the yellow-throated longclaw. It resembles our meadowlark, but it's not. It's a different species, but it looks a lot like our meadowlark. Now, the other three birds going through the middle, these are really highlights of this area of our trip. Lower bottom is the small button quail. This top one is the harlequin quail, and the one in the middle was probably about this big. It was teeny. This is the quail finch. Our guide Judith saw it. It was in a rut on the road, next to the road, just going after little seeds. And again, it was so small. How she saw it was just incredible. She got good points that day for finding these. But these three birds were all very top-notch birds that we saw on our trip. Again, the guides get excited when we see they may not be rare birds, but they're like the skulkers. They're like finding a Connecticut warbler, or if you've been looking for warblers. Just some more safari pictures. You hear about water holes. They're actually digging water holes for the wildlife. These African buffalo, I've got two sets. This was pretty thin water. This is pretty muddy water. And the bugs around this guy were just, the top left were just, it was driving him crazy, and he kept going in and out. These guys were all covered. They didn't have bug problems. They needed, the ones up on top needed a little more of that mud to keep them protected. The cob, we had a male and a female that he was getting a little antsy with her. And then the giant forest hog. This is the largest wild hog pig that you can, that is in the wild. Big, hairy thing. So we talked about black and white birds. There's an awful lot of brown birds too. Most of these are lapwings. Top left is the wattled lapwing. The center picture are its eggs, just right down on the ground, like a killdeer would do. We've got a plover, bottom left, the Kitslit's plover, and then the Senegal lapwing and the crowned lapwing. We saw, I didn't record how many lapwings, or I didn't count up. We saw lots of different lapwings on the trip. And I also I mentioned that I like plants. These were interesting, along this back ground, the trees there. They're euphorbias. They're not a cactus, but they're in that. This was called the candelabra tree, and they're all there. And this elephant was right along the road, fairly close. You'll see how close in a little bit. Yeah, there's our first vehicle, and he's off to the right. He's a little antsy. It's wandering. And as we drove by slowly, we looked back, and he had come out to the road between us and the next vehicle. And we all said, boy, if I was in that vehicle, I think I'd back up. It looks a little close. I did like this subtle humor. We saw at one of the lodges we stopped for lunch. It would be most unwise to approach them closely. Yes. So I like that caution, very polite caution. So we took another boat ride on the Kazinga Channel. This is a natural waterway that connects Lakes Edward and Lake George. Some of the things we saw there: Nile monitor, pretty good sized lizard. There's some hippos out of the water. They're pretty good size. And just for perspective, look at the African elephant and those African buffaloes. He just towers over them. African skimmers are the birds up here. We have skimmers here in the US. These were the African species. And here's another oxpecker on the buffalo, top of the buffalo. Some of the other cool birds that we saw along this on the boat ride was the Egyptian goose. You can get some Egyptian geese in Florida. They're exotics. Well, they're native here. That guy's preening. Next to him is a knob-billed duck, and in front of that is the black-winged stilt, all in that one little picture. This guy in the middle, this was one that I wanted to see. This is not anything exciting to look at, but that's the black heron. If you go to YouTube and Google daytime, nighttime bird, you'll find this. They do this feeding thing where they take their wings around and then they look up. They kind of make a shadow. The reddish egret will do it if you've seen a reddish egret. But there's this British video that's British humor, nighttime, daytime, nighttime, daytime. Yeah, oh well. It's bird humor. Hadada ibis. We saw a couple of different ibis species, and we had two pelican species, the great white pelican and then the pink-backed pelican. I mentioned pied kingfisher. There's the set of three up on the branch. They nest, kingfishers nest in, they dig holes in dirt banks. So all these holes along here are kingfisher holes, nest holes. And got a little, you can hear them chattering, flying around. They're not necessarily going in and out, but they're all up above, flying around their nest holes. And then another, just an example of weaver nests at bottom left. Those are all weaver nests. They're, like I said, they're a social bird. They all nest together, whatever species that was. I have no idea, but it was a cool tree that showed a colony of nests. Some of the other birds we saw, there's another African fish eagle. One of the gull species we saw was the gray-headed gull. Down low is the African sacred ibis. Another stork, here's the yellow-billed stork with the African buffalo in the back. And our Goliath heron, this is the largest, like I said, the largest heron. It's doing the Fleischer pose. It's doing this for thermoregulation. It's cooling down or warming up, whatever the case may be. And they do this for parasite control. It's kind of a funny thing. You'll see great blue herons do this here in Florida. It's not anything, we just make fun of it. So, all right, some of the cool pictures that Rob got that I didn't. Three-banded plover. Another dove. This is the tambourine dove. It was a beautiful thing. We saw a couple of different owls. We heard a couple more. This one is the Varro's eagle owl. It has pink eyelids. That's one way that you could, when you got a picture in focus, which Rob did, you could see those pink eyelids. And the northern carmine bee eater. What a stunning bird. When you have a good camera, you can get good shots. All right, we did see some cats. This wasn't a trip where, like, if you go to Tanzania and Kenya, you'll get lots of big cats on the ground. Well, we got cats in trees, and they were away from our car. So our pictures are a little fuzzy, but Queen Elizabeth National Park is known for its tree climbing African lions. And we had two that were resting, sleeping in the big trees, and then this African leopard as well. So that was cool. Now, the next place we stayed near Bwindi National Park was a place called Ride for a Woman. We were here for 3 nights. It's a very cool cause-oriented organization. They are there to support women, either widows. The social structure in Uganda is different. Most women don't work, they're at home. If your husband dies, then you're up a creek. So this organization helped employ women, they helped support them, they helped educate them. They did a whole bunch of cool things to support the women. And we, like I said, we were there for 3 nights, very comfortable, again, comfortable lodgings. Water pressure wasn't always very good, but it was okay. And at night, we were a little higher up in altitude, and we come back to the rooms. There's no heat in the rooms, but they put hot water bottles in your bed that really held the heat almost through the night, which was cool. But this is they've developed a cottage industry for sewing. I bought some things for Christmas presents, and they gave me this cool little bag. We had a couple of quilters in our group, and they bought fabric. You could buy all kinds of really cool stuff in their shop. It empowers, like I said, it empowers local women. Um, they get together every morning. They talk, they chat, they sing, they dance. They have a very good uh, support for these local women. And they actually performed for us. So it was very cool. They did 4 or 5 different dances and songs, and it was just very neat. We were there, like I said, we were there for three nights. And it's there in the town of Bwindi, which is near the Bwindi Impenetrable National Park, which is a UNESCO site. We birded that afternoon. We got a little touch of what it was like, and then we birded the next day up this roadway, or this, yeah, walked up this hillside, this roadway. There's Liz and Judith, and just some of the cool bugs that we saw. Some sort of shield bug. I don't know if those are eggs on its legs, but that was neat. And this really huge millipede. It was working up a tree. You know, I look at everything. So I have to warn people, friends that don't like snakes when I put snakes in pictures. But some of the birds we saw here and mammals, dusky blue flycatcher, that little guy, a red-tailed monkey, well named, the Carruthers mountain squirrel. We didn't see too many squirrels, but another cuckoo, the red-chested cuckoo. Here's another olive baboon and the many-colored bush shrike. So I mentioned that we went to see chimps. We had a whole day where we went, or a whole morning where we went to see mountain gorillas. Uh, Everyone gathers at this center. There are probably a couple hundred people there, different groups of all sizes. And they gave us our instructions, and then they assigned you to each group to a guide. And you went out away from everybody else, and the guide gave you, more instructions. Um, and then we drove about an hour or so to get to our family spot. There's 20 or more different family groups of gorillas that are habituated. They're used to having people come, and you can spend an hour there. We had to wear masks. Same with the chimps. You had to wear masks. You don't want them catching anything that you've got. So it's to protect them from us. But we gathered with our guide, and then here's our guide. He's given us all of our instructions. And there are guys out in the field before we get there, making sure they know where the families are. And they radio back and forth so that we know where we're going. So I said we went about an hour to an area called the Neck. It's a pretty narrow strip of the park where there happened to be a family right on the edge. Edges are good. If you're a birder, edges are good. You got change in habitat. So there was a family group that we could get to. And bang, yes. So this is the male, the silverback. He's just hanging out. There must have been about 8 or 9 gorillas in this family. And you can see the name they call them, the males get that nice silver coloring. But he decided that he wanted that branch way up there. So he was just hanging out. I think he's got some sort of cataract in his eye, but he was managing just fine. Well, he's munching away. They eat vegetation. Here's one of the females in the middle there. She was fairly close to us. She was eating, it was funny, she was breaking off dead small branches and getting the bugs that were in the middle. And then she's going after fresh vines here. But we each got our little certificate. We've been to see the gorillas. We got one for being in with the chimps as well. But this was just way cool. They provide, or you can hire guides to help you if you're carrying backpacks or whatever. And I had one with me. I had my water and my camera and whatnot. And so I hired Enoch. That's my buddy Enoch, and he had carved that cool walking stick with the gorilla on it that he let me use. And we chatted and worked on his English, which was really pretty good. But you can see the edge is where the national park is over here. And then this is all cultivated land. It's we are in an area where they're all subsistence farming. So this is tea that they've planted tea. And our Enoch was telling me that one person doesn't own the whole hillside. Maybe they own about 4 or 5 rows, and then somebody else owns the next 4 or 5 rows. And just to kind of give you a perspective of where we were, the gorillas are all back in here on this edge area. Yeah, there's one right up there. We went from 80s to 60s, maybe. It wasn't bad. Yeah. I've got a t-shirt and a field shirt, and I'm probably hot. I wore field pants most of the time, lightweight, these nylon pants and nylon shirts. It was comfortable. Yeah, it wasn't blazing hot. Do you remember? Was it?
Maybe one day, like it just depended on where you are, maybe when on the safari in the plains, but then
Right,
lots of times you were in the
lower.
mountains.
This is a little higher up. There's an area along the edge of Uganda called the Albertine Rift, which is a little higher up, which is where the mountain gorillas are. So we're coming down now. We're making our loop back towards Entebbe, but we have one more lodging, and that's the Rakobo Rock Lodge. It's near Lake Maburo National Park. Very comfortable. We had our own little separate little cottages. This is where Cynthia and I were, with a big net on it. Nice bathroom facilities. This area is known for its interesting cattle. This is the Ankole longhorned cow. Huge. They're hollow, but they have these huge horns. Not a whole lot of good, rich food to eat. So they were pretty scrawny. Some of my pictures weren't as nice looking as that one. Some of the mammals that we saw in this area that were pretty exciting. The cat it's more like a raccoon striped ring-tailed cat. This was the botched genet. It came out at night. We were out in the vehicles at night, and it ran across the road and climbed up this tree. And again, Rob got this great picture. My picture shows its tail, but he got the face. Some of the other mammals, the next one is a topi, that black and brown, dark brown. Couple of zebra pictures. We had several that had young, cute little guy there. These are the maneless plain zebra. Common warthog. There's a little guy having breakfast or dinner. Common eland in the middle with the stripes, and then an impala. If you look from the back, it always has this M marking on its hind end. some more of the birds that we saw in this area. African green pigeon, the yellow-fronted tinkerbird, that not a very big bird, but pretty loud. Here was Anne's number one bird that she wanted to see was the lilac-breasted roller. Beautiful bird. Another bee eater, black bee eater. That down low, the bare-faced go-away bird. Interesting name. It's kind of sounds like go away. Now, a bird that everybody, even the guides, got excited about because they'd never seen one is this woodpecker, the golden-tailed woodpecker. Again, it's always cool when the local guides see something special. And then, not very colorful, but this little guy here in the lower right is the gray-throated barbet. It has cool little tufts coming out right above its bill. So this was our group at the end of our journey, overlooking the area near Lake Maburo. We're at the lodge. We had a wonderful time. How did we do? Bird-wise, I always like to give species totals. The total group, that's guides and members and whatnot, saw close to 500 bird species, 494 species. The trip the year before, in 2024, had 428. So we were just, it was just amazing how many more we got. My number of lifers there, my trip list was 471, 457 lifers. I also count how many I've heard. Who knows if I'll ever be back. And if I do go back and I see them, then it changes category. Liz, 457, Ann, 451, 48 different mammals. Our cars would drive by children and they would always be smiling and waving and saying something in their native language that essentially was white people, I think, something our guy said, oh yeah, our Davis would just chuckle and laugh. And we saw squatty potties. That was interesting. Yes, we saw a few of those. So I want to thank brownwood birders. A few more birds. The bird that we saw every day, the common bulbul, got pretty dull. We said, oh my gosh, we have to see one of those for our streak. And the Ross's Tarraco, we saw several Tarracos. So thanks for having us. I will answer any questions. Photos came from various.
I just want to say thank you to Tammy. It's an awesome presentation. It was an awesome trip. I'm going to stop the recording here and then we have time.
We have time just for a few questions. I know we'll probably have 1,000 questions to ask, but we have to do a little bit other business. If you talk loudly enough, I won't bring the microphone back there.